Alright, strap in folks, because we're diving headfirst into the economic equivalent of a dumpster fire wearing a MAGA hat. Donald Trump, a man who seems to think trade wars are easy to win, has floated the idea of slapping a 104% tariff on all Chinese goods. You heard that right, 104%. That's not a tariff, that's a ransom note disguised as economic policy. Now, before you start stockpiling instant ramen and building a bunker out of Amazon boxes, let's unpack this dumpster fire, shall we? On the surface, Trump's tariff looks about as appealing as a plate of cold, soggy fries. But like a McDonald's cheeseburger at 3 a.m., there's a certain morbid curiosity about what it might offer. Could this actually be a strategic masterstroke to bring back American manufacturing jobs and reduce our trade deficit with China? Or is it just going to blow up in our faces, sending prices soaring, sparking a global trade war and leaving the global economy in a state of panicked disarray? Let's find out. The theory here is about as subtle as a bald eagle wearing an American flag Speedo. Make Chinese imports more expensive and suddenly that Made in America label starts looking a lot sexier. Companies might be incentivized to dust off the old factories in Ohio and Pennsylvania, or maybe pop up some new ones south of the border in Mexico. Of course, this assumes companies haven't already squeezed every last drop of efficiency out of their existing supply chains. And let's not forget, folks, setting up new factories takes time, money, and a whole lot of red tape. It's not exactly as simple as flipping a switch and watching the assembly line start humming. Ah yes, the trade deficit, that magical number that keeps economists up at night and politicians frothing at the mouth. Trump seems to think this tariff will be the economic equivalent of a colonic flushing out that pesky 300 billion plus trade deficit with China. But here's the thing. Trade deficits are complicated. They're not simply a measure of who's winning or losing. Imposing a tariff might make that number look prettier on paper, but it doesn't address the underlying issues, like America's insatiable appetite for cheap goods or China's strategic undervaluation of its currency. Now, this is where things get interesting. A 104% tariff is less of a trade policy and more of a declaration of economic war. It's like showing up to a poker game with a rocket launcher and demanding everyone hand over their chips. The thinking goes that this aggressive move would give the US leverage in trade negotiations, especially when it comes to intellectual property rights and technology transfer. Basically, it's a high-stakes gamble to force China to play ball on America's terms. Let's be honest, America's reliance on China for everything from iPhones to ibuprofen has become a bit of a problem. It's like relying on your unreliable roommate to pay the rent on time. Eventually, it's going to backfire. This tariff, in all its chaotic glory, could force US businesses to diversify their supply chains, looking to other countries like Vietnam, India, or even, dare I say, back home. Of course, this assumes those countries can actually ramp up production to meet American demand, which, let's be honest, is a pretty big ask. Let's not forget, folks, there's an election coming up, and nothing gets the blood pumping in certain segments of the American electorate like a good old-fashioned trade war with China. Trump knows this, and he's not afraid to exploit it. Painting himself as the defender of American jobs and the scourge of unfair Chinese trade practices might just be enough to energize his base and secure him another 4 years in the White House. Okay, here's where the fun and games stop. Remember those cheap Chinese goods you love so much? Well, get ready to kiss them goodbye. We're talking everything from electronics and appliances to clothing and toys. That 104% tariff is going to get passed down the line faster than a hot potato at a family reunion, leaving consumers holding the bag. And we're not talking about a small price bump here. Think 20%, 30%, maybe even 50% more for the things you buy every day. Now, let's not forget about China for a second. They're not exactly known for their passive-aggressive approach to international relations. Do you really think they're just going to sit back and take this tariff lying down? Think again, my friend. China has a whole arsenal of economic weapons at its disposal, and they won't hesitate to use them. We're talking retaliatory tariffs on US goods like soybeans, aircraft, and even those shiny iPhones. Buckle up. because things are about to get messy. Remember the good old days of 2008 when the global financial system almost collapsed like a house of cards? Well, get ready for a nostalgic trip down memory lane, because a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest economies could trigger another global meltdown. We're talking stock market crashes, currency fluctuations, and a whole lot of uncertainty. It's enough to make even the most hardened Wall Street trader break out in a cold sweat. Here's a fun economics lesson for you. When tariffs make imported goods more expensive, it creates something called inflation. And inflation, my friends, is a sneaky beast. It slowly eats away at your purchasing power, like a colony of termites slowly devouring your house. The Federal Reserve might be forced to raise interest rates to combat this inflation, which could slow down economic growth and make it even harder for businesses to thrive. It's a vicious cycle, and it's not going to be pretty. Let's not forget about the American businesses caught in the crossfire of this trade war. Many US companies rely on Chinese imports for parts, materials, or finished products. Remember that supply chain diversification we talked about? Yeah, that's not going to happen overnight. In the meantime, these businesses are going to face rising costs, shrinking margins, and some tough decisions. We're talking layoffs, factory closures, and maybe even a few bankruptcies for good measure. So there you have it, folks. Trump's 104% tariff on Chinese goods is about as straightforward as a game of 4D chess played on a roller coaster. On the one hand, it could revitalize American manufacturing, reduce our trade deficit, and give us leverage in global negotiations. But on the other hand, it could also send prices soaring, trigger a global trade war, and tank the US economy. It's a gamble, a high-stakes poker game, with the fate of the global economy hanging in the balance. And as with any good gamble, there are winners and losers. The question is, are we willing to risk it all on a president who seems to think tariffs are as easy to win as a round of golf at Mar-a-Lago? The potential 104% tariff on Chinese goods is a double-edged sword. While it could bring some benefits to the US, the risks and consequences are significant. What do you think? Is it worth the gamble?